press the results of the Michigan Future Business Index. Originally, Mark McDaniel, President and CEO of Cinnaire, was going to present, but we pass along our apologies, but our condolences as his mother passed away very recently, actually. In his place, we're pleased to welcome Mike Witt, who's been doing this anyway. You're the veteran, right? Mike joined Cinnaire in 2020 and serves as Senior Vice President, Asset Management. And there's like a couple of pages here, but we're not going to go into that because we want your information. So please welcome Mike Witt.
Thanks, Chris. I would say it's my information, but it's not, right? I'm just the guy that gets presented. So everybody's information and input with the survey. So I already talked a little bit about Cinnaire, so you're one ahead of me a little bit. So this year's survey, or this quarter's survey, there were 485 small and medium-sized businesses. 406 completed the survey, done the same way we've been doing it online, work by phone. The collection data time frame for this, I think, it's November through December, post-election. So just keep that in mind as you're looking at some of the results. Key takeaways. So the latest Michigan Future Business Index survey results highlight a shift in sentiment among small businesses in Michigan. Concerns over inflation, interest rates, and a weak economy are easing as businesses focus on the pressing challenge of acquiring and retaining talent. Moreover, the recent election results have injected a sense of optimism with the majority of businesses believing it'll bring beneficial outcomes. These findings reflect the resilience and adaptability of Michigan's small business community in navigating the ever-evolving economic landscape. Just some big takeaways there you can see on the screen. The election results were a big piece of this. It was probably fresh in everybody's mind. So 6 in 10 say that the election will be beneficial to their business, which is a positive sign. And most people had high satisfaction with the economy, with its upward climb hitting post-pandemic high points. I know we talked about the pandemic and people's feelings on it, but it's just the best results around that we've had since the past 6 months. Profit increases are the highest in business and professional services, with the finance, insurance, real estate sectors at 27%, while profit decreases were again the highest in the retail food services sector at 44%. Wages increased mostly in the finance, insurance, business sectors at 64%, and they increased the least within the business professional services sectors. Sales increases, we saw the highest, again, in the real estate finance sector at 41%. And then hiring was at its highest in the finance, insurance, and real estate sectors. So those groups are really killing it. That's where Cinnaire fits in the real estate sector. And that was at 23%. And then lastly, retail and food service sectors are most likely to increase their capital investments, which I would say is a good sign compared to where we were with COVID and all those struggling in those sectors. Satisfaction with the economy. 55% say they're satisfied with the economy, 43% were somewhat satisfied, and 12% very unsatisfied. That was up a little bit from last year. Percentage of those saying that they were somewhat dissatisfied, or saying they were dissatisfied with the economy is down to 43%. 28% were somewhat dissatisfied, and 15% were very dissatisfied. Within those results, the finance, real estate, insurance sectors, 61% were most satisfied with the economy, which I think will correlate to what we saw on that slide, since they're doing best. And then the manufacturing and construction sectors are once again the most dissatisfied, which they have been past results. The next slide is sort of a graph to demonstrate this. You can see that. You can kind of take a look at that video this year, but it's got past results from 2006 and 2024, so you can kind of see how that graph kind of shifts. Greatest challenges to doing business. So as you can see on here, a little bit of change. Inflation is now impacting the financial insurance sector the most at 18%. Acquiring and retaining talent, that's always pretty high. It's gone up 1 point since Q2 of last year, so it's now at the top of the list. Retail and food services sectors and finance insurance, they're reporting inflation hitting them the most, which probably isn't a surprise to most folks. Acquiring and retaining talent still impacts the manufacturing and construction, 22%, and the business and professional services sectors at 21% most. I think those groups are still, struggling to get some talent. I know on our end, we have a few positions that are open at this point, and we're not really struggling to get people, but it is a lot harder than what it was 2 or 3 years ago. We're not getting the volume of applicants that we used to get, at least on our jobs. Then lastly, finding and retaining customers impact the retail and food services sectors the most. At 17%, but you see that's number 3 on the list here. Challenges to do business. This next slide is kind of a graph that just sort of shows that in an interesting way. You can see the positive on the left, or the Q4 2023 on the left, and then where we are with Q4 2024. Good thing is it's not one of these. I think it's fairly steady, but it just kind of shows some of these different impacts in a bit of a different form. The next slide, greatest reasons for optimism, which I think is a good thing for everybody to see. You can see the list there. The number 1 in the survey, election politics, hope for reforms, up 13%, which is, it drove that way up to the top, where it wasn't always at the top before. Who would have thought politics was a great reason for optimism, but it is. So, at least for the results, like I said, I didn't make these up, these are the results of the survey. So that took the top spot. Demand for quality products and services are second. It is down a little bit, that was the top before. Business growth and expansion, customers, very low customers. You can see the list there for yourself. I will say one of the things that's dropped is team staff employees is down 7% since last year. So that has kind of gone down the list a little bit, but I think more just as a result of people's optimism for other areas that we're looking for. Within these results, the finance, insurance, real estate sector and the manufacturing and construction sector are most likely to be optimistic about the election. That came up the highest at 20% within those sectors. So that was, 2 of the bigger ones that drove that up to the top there. And then the business and professional services sector were most optimistic about their customers and clients, which is probably to be expected within those sectors as well. And then lastly, the healthcare and nonprofit sectors are most optimistic about growth for the future. All right, next slide. Impact of the election, take a closer look at that. So this is just kind of a graph to show some of the results for the impact of the election question. Those in the manufacturing and construction services sector, they're at 67%, and the finance, insurance, real estate sectors at 66% are most likely to believe that the results of the election would have a positive impact and benefit their businesses. So this graph kind of shows some of those results with the yeses and the noes definitely the leaders, but those 2 sectors had the biggest impact on the yeses. Next slide, sales and profit projections, regaining momentum. Projections for sales and profits trending significantly positive. Projections for decreased profits were down sharply as well. So I think that again is a result of what we saw overall in the survey. I think some of that is tied to the election results and people's belief of what's to come in the future. Let's see what Dr. Ballard has to say about that after this, but that was the perception of folks that took the survey. Projected sales growth was at 54%, which was up 5 points from Q4 2023, and the expectations for sales decreases were down 4 points in the same time frame. And then the other big piece here, projected profit growth was at 43%, which was 5% higher than Q4 2023, and then 12% expected profits to decline in the next 6 months, which was down at the same time. Within that, I would say the results show that the business professional services sector were at 61%, and then the lowest for the healthcare nonprofit sector as far as expectations for sales growth. Next slide, job market continues to cool. Most of the respondents saying that they would maintain current staffing levels, not necessarily growth, but maintaining. Not a lot of folks saying they're going to cut jobs, but just more to maintain. situation at this point, whereas last year, the folks are still looking at job growth and creating more positions for their businesses. I can tell you at Cinnaire, we did a lot of hiring in the last 2 or 3 years to sort of hire up for growth that we were doing in our strategies. So kind of aligns with these results, and then we're not hiring, but it's more refilling for people that leave as opposed to new positions, which I think correlates a lot with the results that we saw here in the survey. Kind of in the details here, 30% say that they plan to hire more employees over the next 6 months, which is a 9-point drop from last year. And then 57% will maintain their current staffing levels, which is up 4 points from last year, so kind of a little bit of a flip-flop there. And then 8% saying they're planning to lay off people, which is up 3 points from last year, but still pretty small in that sector. Talent acquisition, so keeping in the jobs pool here. 37% say they access to qualified talent is pretty good or excellent, which is up 2 points from a year ago. With 56% say their access to talent is only fair or poor, which is down a year from a year ago. I would say in our shop we're still seeing talented people come through for applications on our jobs. I don't see that as a problem in the retail sector or real estate sector, so I would imagine within various sectors it changes a little bit or a little bit different because more of our folks are college graduate type people that are looking for professional jobs. 52% of folks reported having difficulty filling jobs, which is down 6 points from a year ago, which I would say is a good thing. One of the things that's down 5 points from a year ago, 70% of those actively searching for talent are having difficulty, and then 57% attribute that to the lack of qualified applicants, which was up 2 points from a year ago. So there is that information there. As far as some sectors are still struggling with unqualified. Next slide on wage increase projections is kind of a mixed bag here. 5% listed wage inflation is the top challenge doing business in this survey, which continues to decline. Once again, fewer people are reporting wage increases over the past 6 months. 49% say they expect to see raise wages in the next 6 months, which is up 4 points from last year, and 47% say they will not raise wages, so kind of a split back there. One of the things I will tell you is we get a lot of, in my job, we get a lot of financials from different communities that we invest in across our footprint, and a lot of the biggest cost factor that we have are wages for folks that work in the company. So we were seeing strong wage increases the last 2 or 3 years, and sort of leveling off a little bit, which I think is in line with the survey results that folks have in this survey. Next slide, projected investment and growth. Nearly 6 in 10 folks plan to invest in employee training within the next 6 months, which is down 2 points, but still pretty high. Slightly more than half, 52%, will invest in advertising, which is up a point from last year, but still pretty steady from what it was. And then nearly a quarter, 23%, plan to invest in new equipment, which is pretty steady from where it was last year. And then lastly, 4 in 10, about 36%, plan to expand their business with a new product or service line, which is up 1% from last year, but still keeping pretty steady from where it was. Lastly, some conclusions. Concerns over inflation, cash availability, and weakening economy remain. Those concerns are softening according to the latest survey. In addition, the survey indicates continued cooling in wage inflation and government regulations and the cost of healthcare again climbing on the list of significant concerns. A strong majority now say they're satisfied with the economy, which is great. Continuing to climb, the long climb out of the dismal territory of the pandemic. The pandemic was not mentioned a lot this time, which is great. I think everybody kind of wants to throw that in the rear view. So, 2020 just wasn't there anymore, right? It was 5 years ago. Now it's 25, right? I wrote a check yesterday for 2025, couldn't believe it. Profits continue to gain traction with business owners indicate that they've begun a period of fiscal austerity. They also indicated exuberant regarding the next 6 months, projecting continued increases in profits and sales while remaining prudent with wage hikes and hiring. So So overall, I would say there was a lot of optimism overall in this survey. We'll see what Dr. Ballard has to say, but that was the thought of the folks that were surveyed and responded.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you very much.
I don't know if you picked up on this, but a couple times Mike was doing one of those "don't shoot the messenger" thing, right? Okay, so I think it's interesting that the #1 challenge now has jumped back up, and I expect it'll probably stay there for 10 years. Is talent acquisition. Might not be a great time to be closing our borders. Not a political statement, but I mean supply and demand, right? Okay, so thank you, Mike. We appreciate that. So I also want to call attention to Paul King, President of ROI Insight. Paul, if you give kind of the Queen's wave there real quick.
Way back.
He always hides behind the post in case this doesn't go well, you know.
Good seats, eh, buddy?
Yeah, there you go. So we want to thank him. Of course, he conducted and compiled the MFBI survey and its results, and he's going to be sticking around afterwards, so if you have any questions, anything like that, besides. So let's get on with the rest of them. We'll start off with a little update on commercial space, etc. And please invite to the podium with me Eric Rosekrans, Vice President.
Everybody, hello, good morning. All the smiling faces, the one thing I noticed when I walked in, I know I don't see Chris a whole lot, but he has socks on. Well, good, it's good to see you with socks on, Chris. Okay, good morning again. One thing as I go through this, I do want to say that in the commercial real estate world, the things that are happening right now vary greatly from sector to sector, region to region, city to city. And a lot of times what we hear on the news, if you watch national programs, if you watch local programs, elements that you hear can be very, very true across the board, but the impact on different cities, different regions is very different. What might happen in Lansing or affect Lansing is going to affect places like New York City very differently. So you need to keep that in mind because there's a lot of rabbit holes that you can go down with all of these subjects. So there's a lot of generality and things that you need to think about as you go through it. So what we were asked to do is give her a little review of 2024. You can blow by my picture because it's up there.
Yes.
Okay, good. As long as you saw it. That was 15 years ago. So I'm just going to blow through. I'm just going to blow through some of these generalities. I do want to talk at the end about a part of, I've been doing this for 46 years, a part of what's happening here in Lansing that I think is important to me. And it should be important to us as we try to figure out what we're going to do specifically in the market that is central to Lansing, and that's downtown. So anyway, interest rates were lowered somewhat this year. Obviously, as everybody knows, the impact of that, interest rates were lowered by the Fed. The impact of that on the commercial field has not really decreased the loans, the loan rates. But I think a lot of people feel that we're now back to historical, quote, norms, not what we had, post-COVID, when rates were now in the 2 and 3% range. So anyway, I think the important thing there is it's not as bad today as some people make it out to be because we are back in a normal state. One of the things you hear about from a maturity wall perspective is that all these loans that are coming due, everybody a lot of people have predicted doom and gloom for these loans as they come up because the values aren't there, especially in the office market. It was also, the retail market was getting some pressure, but that has come back now. But the office market and the loans that were coming due would create an issue where the value wasn't there. Banks would probably foreclose. Banks don't want to foreclose. So if you look at the defaults that occurred, none of these default numbers had been anywhere where people had projected a few years ago. And you can see the different default defaults over the time. But that cliff is not been nearly as bad as banks attempt to work out with owners what they can do. Pricing pressure, the biggest issue with pricing pressure has probably been on the office market. Multifamily has had some also, and clearly loan distress is a factor, and vacancy rates have decreased a little bit. They are still at historical highs, again, especially in the office market. Retail, frankly, has come back and is held reasonably steady. That was probably the worst hurt sector post-COVID, almost immediately post-COVID. And the industrial sector has continued to stabilize. That was the sector post-COVID that really was a benefactor of that. Those markets generally have gone up a little bit as far as vacancy rate. They've come back. So anyway, next slide. Construction activity has remained stagnant in most sectors. You can see just even what's happening around here. There has been areas where there has been construction, but as prices have declined, the gap between buying, renovating, and versus new construction is still too great. So you see a lot of people looking at existing property and going from there. The deal volume was down in most classes, but I think the one thing that you need to recognize when you talk about the different classes, office, retail, industrial, is that Class A property in any sector is in a different world. Generally, Class A properties have done well, and that is across all sectors. Whether you're talking Lansing, Michigan, or Memphis, Tennessee, or New York City, it's not those properties that are having problems in general. It's Class B and below, or maybe even A- and below properties that generally have to, that may have issues. And I think the other thing that's important is you look at revamping a property, changing its use. The one you hear most is office to hotel or office to hotel and that sort of thing. And the issue with that is it's not as easy as you think it is, because office buildings were built as office, hotels were built as hotels, retail buildings were built as retail. And although you do see it happen, you've seen it happen around here, less than 5% of the properties that are built around the country have an adaptable, this is in the office sector. And forgive me if I keep popping to the office sector, but that's been my playground for 46 years. Less than 5% of the buildings that are built aren't built or designed for a reuse of a different kind. So it's not as easy as you think it is. And we have one going around in Lansing in downtown where a building was actually a hotel converted to an office, and now it's corner of Washington and Michigan Avenue downtown. It's going to be repurposed as apartments. But that was a building that was designed where it's not as difficult to do it with something like that. So anyway, the forecast, I think, and again, all of these are very general for the most part. Obviously, the geopolitical world will affect real estate, whatever happens, as leadership shifts. I think the one thing that people forget, I get a lot of people who come up and say, boy, you must be really struggling in your business, and that is absolutely not the case. Corporate real estate, CRE's corporate real estate, needs real estate. They need, whatever you're doing, you need real estate, whether you're upsizing, downsizing, or maintaining what you have. There's a need for real estate as it is an ever-changing facet of a corporation's or office user's life. So it's constantly in flux and constantly on the move, and it's there. People need it. You all have your businesses. Real estate probably is a part of it, whether you're leasing office space, owning an industrial building, have a retail site, want to expand those kinds of things, or down. So whatever you're doing, there's a need. With interest rates, what we're finding is that they really haven't had that much of an impact. The cut hasn't had that much of an impact in corporate real estate. but uncertainty continues, but there is optimism as we go into 2025. Debt repricing, it's going to happen as these loans come due and banks and owners in the market try to figure out what to do with those opportunities. I think the important thing in many instances to understand through all of this is that an operating expenses, I put that as a category here because the operating expense side of an equation in any real estate number, these expenses are going extremely high, extremely quick. Insurance premiums going up, labor's up, material costs are up, property taxes are up as governments attempt to create more money to fund their operations. And the operating expenses of these buildings has risen dramatically and created a lot of impact and thought that people have to go through as you assess things. And what it's done, especially from an investment side, is it's brought down the value because your expenses are higher and net operating income's lower. But the projection is that operating expenses are going to continue to go up as these cost categories face their business models. I think the other thing just from a national perspective is workplace strategies, how companies decide to bring in and integrate the work from home, how that's affected, and that's you can talk about that for hours and how that might affect businesses. It will affect businesses differently, and leadership will affect that. You're starting to hear more of a come back to work or get back to work mentality from some companies. The election we just went through, the leader of the United States now is a big proponent of that, and the people around him are big proponents of that. How that trickles down and how it affects all the communities will be interesting to see. But it's here, and it's ever changing as people and companies discuss that strategy. So just a little bit on the local market. From an industrial standpoint, the inventory has remained limited despite a slight increase in vacancy. Construction activity has continued to be stagnant because of that gap. Rents expected, increases are expected given the limited options for industrial and warehousing users. And the leasing activity is projected to be continue to be active with owner-user purchases slowing down. From a retail perspective, the inventory, this was a sector that was hit almost immediately after COVID hit, as businesses within the first month realized there was trouble. And it has bounced back very nicely. It's bounced back very nicely in our community. There's a lot of trends that are going on with, obviously the entertainment trends. We see this around here with repurposing of these malls, repurposing of big box spaces, new businesses starting up, the quick service restaurants and how they're dealing with their needs and what's happened. There's a lot of restaurants that are now starting to open up, a lot of freestanding spaces that they're looking for versus inline shopping center spaces. So the expectation is that there will be strong leasing activity. And you do hear about Big Lots is closing, all the Rite Aids are closing, American Freight closed over on Lake Lansing Road. But they're filling, there's activity on those spaces, and these spaces are being repurposed and they're filling with alternative uses. So the negative is not always that bad. And in retail, I think what you're seeing is that it's a creative market where people are doing things differently or for repurposing these spaces. So now my home, the office market, the owner-user sales have been very strong over the last 24 months. I would say of the 24 sales we've been involved in, almost all of them have been to owner-users. So what these companies are doing is they're going out and buying buildings at discounted prices, putting dollars in, so their net investment into these properties is still way less than going out and building new. And that gap's there, so that we feel is going to continue to happen. The overall leasing activity, we still feel will be relatively good, be moderate. But but it's all over the board. It could be companies downsizing, could be upsizing, could be just staying where they are. But leasing activity is occurring. A lot of people say they don't see any new leases downtown. Well, we've been involved in almost probably a couple dozen leases over the last 12 to 18 months in downtown Lansing, office leases. So things are happening. It's just not a sexy world. And I'm surprised you all are still awake, actually, listening to this, because I'm about to fall asleep myself. But the one thing, to close this out, what I want to talk about is CBD leasing. I think CBD leasing is going to continue to go on. There's going to continue to be deals because the state government's located down there. There are people that need to be around that state government. But I think the one thing that is important in the philosophy that I've tried to relay, and I've been vilified in the papers by the state of Michigan. But when you look at the major cities in Michigan, Lansing, Grand Rapids, and Detroit, Grand Rapids, granted there are differences with these cities. There's demographic differences, which, and there's the leadership of those communities that are very different. But when you look at Grand Rapids has its huge benefactors. We all know who they are, what they are, and what they do. What those families do that are there, how they work with their governments, how they get behind projects, how they invest the money, and how they make their area tick very well. You look at Detroit, what they're going through. Detroit has their families that are involved, their benefactors that work with the communities, work with the governmental entities, and do their thing. And you see what's happening down in Detroit. Lansing was a blip on the map until state government decided to locate here. We don't have any benefactors. We have a lot of great companies that do a lot of great things. We have great families that have great businesses around here. But we don't have those major benefactors that these other communities have. And it's true around the country in many cities where it's just different than it is in Lansing. So I have always contended that our benefactor is the state of Michigan. The state of Michigan canceled many leases, many hundreds of thousands, a couple 100,000 square feet of space, of office space, which were people that would walk our streets and would service the businesses downtown. And not only were those canceled, but ancillary businesses were canceled because of that. The obvious one in downtown Lansing was the YMCA. They had to close because of lack of people downtown. So I contend that to make downtown come back from an office perspective, and I'm not saying great things are happening downtown. There's a lot of great people doing a lot of great things to try to revitalize that and bring more people downtown. But I contend that we have some big holes in office buildings downtown. They can't be repurposed. One Michigan Avenue is very challenging to repurpose. Victor Building's very challenging to be repurposed. Phoenix Building's very challenging to be repurposed. And these buildings are sitting here with all this space empty. And I contend that the only way that this is going to come back is if we can somehow get the state of Michigan to recognize that it's in their best interest to have a strong, vital downtown Lansing and not go around with the attitude that these developers have benefited from all these great state deals because they were complicit in those deals too. And it takes two to tango. And I've talked with a lot of people downtown, I've talked with the mayor's office, and I've shared my feelings, and I think that's a very important element for our market to help spur it on as we do all of the other items to try to revitalize that area. But a strong downtown is the heartbeat of Lansing. And that's just my personal editorial about the market here in Lansing. So thank you.
That's part of our demonstration of how to stretch 7 minutes to 25. Eric, thanks so much. We appreciate all that. A lot of what has been going on, and you're talking about repurposing, is people came back at the end of their lease and found out they needed that space. They just replanned it, so different workspaces, etc. So one of my favorite missions is the Choose Lansing, which you may remember as the Convention Visitors Bureau. And their mission is to bring people into town, have them drop a bunch of money, have a great experience, go away, and come back and do the same thing again. And we appreciate that very much. And of course, the CEO of Choose Lansing is Julie Pingston.
All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. I'm always happy to participate and tell the story of tourism and hospitality for our region. As a couple comments came through the previous speakers, you know, hospitality and tourism has been on that post-COVID. Can we ever get back to where we are? So I have some hopefully good news to share today. So our mission is really to enhance that quality of life for our residents by bringing in that economic value to the community. Every few years we do a study of through Anderson Economic here locally of how many people come to the community, what they spend, and the jobs affected. So the cycle for that last update was in 2021. We really didn't want to know that data to compare it to anything, so we just did that. So you flip to the next slide. This is our latest data, and please don't look at the middle circle. I'll explain that in a minute. The number of visitors that come to our community is now 6.7 million visitors, and nobody ever really realizes that. That's a lot of people that are kind of looking like us and blending into the community. They're people that attend amateur sporting events, visit their kids at MSU. They don't look like a Traverse City, you know, tourist coming through, going to the sand dunes. So 6.7 was a really great number for us. The economic impact is $732 million. Please disregard whoever created that for me. That's a big economic impact for this community to have those dollars coming in, like Chris said, to the community, and then those people go home and hopefully come back. And it does affect 9,500 hospitality jobs. That number is down. That's been a higher number, 10,000 to 11,000 over time, so that did go down. Our industry is still refilling, or in doing a lot of different things. Many of our hotels are going to online check-in, where you can check in with an app and go right to your room. They need front desk agents, things like that. So that's where some of the jobs that were lost are being able to then still accommodate our guests and be able to take care of them in new ways. And that's a great advancement for our industry. So getting into where we sit for 2024 and how the market did for us in tourism and hospitality, this is my favorite graph. This is the number of hotel rooms sold over time, and we hit a high mark in 2019 of 1,060,000 rooms. We were really excited about that number, but as you can see in 2024, that number through November is 1,041,000. So I can tell you in December we typically sell 60 to 65,000 rooms, so we're going to surpass that 2019 number and hit probably 1.1 million-ish, so really exciting. Come to our annual meeting, we'll make a big deal about that. I can't say it officially yet, but I'm pretty confident that we'll get there. Demand was up in our hotel sector, which then affects all of our hospitality businesses, 6% for 2024 so far, so those are really good growth numbers. To Eric's point about downtown Lansing, sometimes you don't feel it. You don't feel all of this visitation, you don't feel that new energy because it is a little bit quieter downtown to see that vitality, but this is visitation throughout the entire Tri-County region. So when we look at the hotel occupancy, that's where a little different story is told. Because on the left there, we have had a number of rooms enter the market, over 800 since 2019, so that's selling 800 more rooms, 365 days. So that pulled down our occupancy. Last year, though, we were at 53.8%, so year-to-date so far at 55 is inching upward, but not nearly where we were back in 2019 at those high 60s. that's when developers come in and build a lot of hotels. So this is what happened. We hit 60, 70% occupancy, hotels start to develop. And so we had a lot in the pipeline during the pandemic, and that now has stabilized out. And the last hotel, Town Place Suites, opened about a month ago, and there's maybe one more in the pipeline, but I'm gonna hopefully have a good office to conversion to a hotel with the other one in the pipeline, which is the downtown City Hall project that we put that City Hall to become a hotel with a rooftop restaurant and really be a cornerstone for downtown. So that's coming probably 2028. So if we go to the next slide, I'm going to show a little bit of the occupancy trends. Green is where 2024 is, and I want to point out there's a couple of spikes between 24 and 23 in April and May to that left edge of it. That is the impact of on our hotel occupancy of graduation at Michigan State University. Last year it was in May, this year it was in April. You can see that really great impact of what that does for our community. If we flip to the next slide, you will definitely see it in the average daily rate that the hotels achieve on that time frame as well. Huge spikes up in April and May with that shift. So that's kind of a different anomaly for us this year. It's always been in May, it's going back to May, but it definitely skewed some of our looks for the trends that we have. Otherwise, our trends have been pretty similar the last 3 years. Just slow growth, slow and steady growth. I guess that's how we win the race. So looking into 2025, there is a lot coming. I work with our team to really, what we do is sell the future, and the future is now coming. So people have booked into this booking cycle for meetings, conventions, and sporting events, and these events are now coming to town, things that we booked during the pandemic and work to bring here to keep elevating our business. So one of our biggest meeting type events is Odyssey of the Mind this year. It takes place on campus. It's 8,000 competitors of student age. They come to town. They are world finalists coming in to compete on creativity challenges. They have to compete for about 15 minutes, and they're here for 4 days. So they also have 8,000 competitors, but 16,000 family, friends, enthusiasts. So really excited for that over Memorial Day time frame. That comes here every other year. We're really hard to keep that event and keep it strong for the community. So look forward to that. If you see a bunch of kids around East Lansing, matching t-shirts moving in packs, that's what they are. So if we jump to our sport events coming in 2025, this is where there's just huge growth. We have become such an attractor for amateur sporting events. For instance, we have the USA High School Play Target Nationals. We've had that for the last 5 years out of that mysterious trap shooting ground. You might notice and see when you're driving past Mason on the right-hand side is this big trap shooting grounds. It's one of the largest in the country. So we've taken advantage and brought a lot of archery and trap type shooting events here. That event was looking to shop around a little this year, putting out an RFP. They've actually pulled back the RFP because we had their event here this summer. If you recall, it's when that hurricane came and we got a bit of the water with a lot of rain and flooding. The trap shoot grounds flooded. It was a hot mess, or a cold mess actually, but our team really came to the rescue, worked with Dean Transportation, got shuttling, got the people taken care of, had auxiliary parking at Leslie High School, Mason High School. We put our team 100% involved. They pulled back the RFP and they just spoke with us for 5 more years. So that's a really great story. And that brings kids from all over the country. I asked one of the competitors this year, I said, well, this is his starter gun, $3,000 gun. I was like, okay. There's also some very affluent travelers who come to our community and get out and about. So some really great other events through the High School Athletic Association. They are trying to create all their state finals, championship level events to be here in mid-Michigan, so that is easy for all their teams to get here, but they can also have their staff on site and make it easy for them. So, and then we'll look at Big Ten cross country coming here. We have some rotational events for cross country, and we have such a good track record with cross country that we have some NCAA events, and very excited about some NCAA golf regionals and maybe choice foods, right? NCAA, fast. Anyway, there's also golf events. So wanted just to quickly highlight some of our work with accessibility. I think at one of the regular Michigan Business Network meetings, I mentioned once about how we have done some study through Anderson Economic of the impact that we've had over the last 7 years, really targeting our activities to create opportunities for those with disabilities to come to our community. For accessibility purposes, we've really worked with our partners and had great success. So much so that the ROI on that we found through some studies with Anderson validated was the national average for people coming to a community in Michigan with someone in their travel party that has a disability was 17%. Many of our competitors around the state were 13, 14, 15. This community was 21% because of the efforts that we've made to bring people here. And we've done it purposefully to bring people with disabilities here because they can't always find places to go or places that are welcoming to their needs. So we've opened that up and now we have some ROI behind it, but we also know that it's all of us too. We all might have some kind of need for an accommodation at some point in time. So this has really been at the forefront of a lot of what we've done. We, for the first time, had Silver Bells in the city, worked with them, and they put sensory-friendly tips. I think if you've been to Silver Bells, you know that is nothing but chaos, and anybody with any type of neurodiversity probably does not want to be there. But there was a quiet space for people to go. There were hints on how to navigate the event. There were noise-canceling headphones available on site. So all of those things just really keep telling that story. We did tell our story when we sponsored a Under the Radar episode about all the accessibility efforts that have been done here in our community. So looking forward to continuing that. And this gets to, the next slide gets to the future of what our team, I mentioned, has to sell the future. We have to talk years in advance about what's coming to town. And these are some things in 2025 towards the top. Eric mentioned about entertainment venues. We are going to have 4 of those: High Caliber, Spare Time, Zap Zone, and Busters coming into town. So entertainment venues are not only for our local residents and university students, but visitors love that and go there. A lot of new restaurants popping up around Eastwood that everyone's probably noticed. Some have opened. We also have the Powder Park Zoo. It has a veterinary clinic being constructed right now, and that should open later this year, where there's going to be window viewing for seeing the clinic, how they take care of the animals. You can see maybe how they're doing a dental procedure on the rhinos. It'll be kind of cool. So looking forward to that. But really down at the bottom is where we're spending some of our time, and we're going to put some of this out to our clients and partners, because there is so much coming to town. There are those cranes coming, and there are a lot of different developments that are going to make a difference for visitors. And they're very much visitor facing, from things like the stupid road construction that we've all hated is really going to make, like the entry now coming off from Detroit into 127, you look like you're in, a world-class city on the horizon. So we're looking forward to bridging some of those gaps and getting people here. Obviously, the Ovation for arts and performances is going to be a 2,000-seat venue coming next year. So we're looking forward to promoting that. We're already getting calls to book it, so that's an exciting opportunity. And I put the City Rescue Mission on there because I think it's a great story that the City Rescue Mission is expanding and relocating to serve more people, which is a great opportunity for our community to help the unhoused, have more places and more services to go. But it also frees up space across from a hotel and right at the Meyer that we can then rehabilitate into maybe something that serves those guests that are in that zone to really showcase our community better. So there's a lot coming. There's a lot coming forward. We have our annual meeting coming up in March. I invite anybody to attend, and we'll talk slower and have a few more details about that. More than 7 minutes. So, but it's a great event that we do. So thank you for the opportunity.
God, that's so much fun. I might also add that though the occupancy rate is down, probably the total number of rooms is up. Yeah, because of the addition of new rooms in the marketplace. So great job. Thank you, Julie. Appreciate that very much. Who's up next? Is it Bob? Tim Daman, Lansing Regional Chamber of Commerce, and involved in absolutely everything business here. Come on up, bud. You guys always have a lot going on. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it. And I was wondering how many years it had been. I was trying to think about that yesterday. So 13 years. Congratulations on that. And thank you to all of you to keep coming back to hear us. Right? I mean, I look around this room, and so many of you hear Bob and Julie and I, speak on a regular basis. So thank you for being here this morning. And as you start preparing for this, I think it always, for us, it's a nice reset as we kind of start thinking about the coming year. And we just this week celebrating our 124th, I guess, birthday or anniversary of the Lansing Regional Chamber of Commerce. And that's something that I know I and my team are very, very proud of that history, and we have a small piece of it right now. And our job is to kind of guide this and hopefully get the organization to the next 124 years. But there are many of you in this room that are part of that and volunteer and part of our organization. I can't let it go by, but PNC, and hearing Tim speak earlier, I want to say it's probably 85 years that PNC's been a member, so that 124 years, we recognized you a number of years ago, so but thank you for that long-term commitment as well. So there's a lot going on here, but I thought since we were celebrating the 124th anniversary, one of our trade associations, ACCE, late last year put out a public opinion poll in Chambers of Commerce. And so when you kind of look at this, and I won't go through all this in great detail, but really viewed as trusted and innovative organizations across the country. And we see that as we travel to other states, other countries, and we look at that, and you say you're from the Chamber of Commerce, people immediately get that. And so we take great pride in being that trusted resource for for our region as well. Top 3 roles that Chambers play: growing the economy, supporting small business, and job creation. All things that that our team is working on every single day. They're working on a communication strategy now around this. You'll start seeing a little bit more of this kind of through our social media feeds and some upcoming communications. If you're interested, for whatever reason, I know you're desperately awaiting this, but the full report's available on our website, and I would encourage you to go there and take a look. Earlier, late last year, we had an opportunity, like several others, to do a viewpoint in the Lansing State Journal. And I think for those of you that know me and know me well, I will always celebrate this region, and I will always at the same time talk about our challenges. So, Eric, you talk about being vilified. I think, sometimes we're right there with you, but I think we have to. I think in order for us to move forward and continue to have the success, we have to know what those challenges are. So we took that opportunity, and Jeff, you can go to the next slide. We took that opportunity to really address that in the viewpoint. Last year, we certainly celebrated the economic growth and investment that we're seeing. We celebrated some legacy for our organization. 19 years with the Celebration of Regional Growth Program, and we recognized 5 businesses back in November. I think 90 businesses total over those 19 years. Adding it up, we're well over $5 billion. I think we're probably somewhere near $7.5 billion, and Bob probably could give us the exact, if not more, numbers on that. But 10,000, new jobs as well as part of that. And I will tell you what, we are very, very proud to be part of that and a little piece of that in that economic growth. We celebrated 10 years with our Leadership Lansing program, 18 years with our 10 Over the Next 10 program. We've integrated Athena Win into our organization now, and they're continuing to do just great work in supporting women professional development growth in our region. So we're very proud of a lot of those legacy pieces that we continue to manage. And at the same time, we had those challenges. Eric talked about downtown and those high occupancy rates, and we flat out called it out here, the absence of state workers downtown. And it's an important piece, and I have a lot of people tell me that challenge me, it needs to be different. You can't rely on state government. But Eric, I'm 100% in on you. No matter what downtown Lansing looks like, we're the state capital. State government has to be at the center of all of it. It doesn't exist without them. They're our major employer. We need to continue to work on that. We have a challenging regulatory and economic development policy at the state and local level in many ways. That regulatory climate, you saw it kind of come through on the business index survey that businesses are concerned about that regulatory climate. We're seeing that locally as well. We're hearing from more and more developers and more businesses and the challenges that they're having there. And so those are things that we need to continue to work on, and at the same time, you look at all the opportunities, and Julie outlined some of those as well, but downtown, transformational housing developments, you've got city hall redevelopments, you've got entertainment venues coming online. And those are things that we certainly need to celebrate and get those across the finish line. You know, you look at the road construction, and yes, it's difficult, but $800 million in progress right now through 2028 of infrastructure investment throughout our region. We've seen it over the last 4 to 5 years with the rebuild of 496 and the rebuild of 127. So get used to it now and enjoy it through the winter, because in another couple of months that southbound lanes will be closed and we'll be back to the two-way traffic on the northbound. But you know what, we'll get through that, and then it continues on after that, right? It continues north on 127 and some more bridge work, I believe, all the way out to Lake Lansing. So that is a significant project, but it's one that our organization and many regional partners strongly advocated for at the state and federal level. To see that happening now, we're certainly there. But we're not going to lose sight of the fact that $800 million in infrastructure into our region that really supports that economic foundation and for future growth. The Michigan Avenue rebuild as well, and it's something near and dear to our organization, and as with Julie and Choose Lansing, we're right on Michigan Avenue. We see it every day. We understand the importance, and if you haven't had an opportunity to see the first part of that construction and that completion, I encourage you to get down there and see it. It's the walkability aspect and everything else that kind of goes into that placemaking and attracting people. Attracting people there. So U.S. small business, you can go to the next slide, Jeff. Index, we work really closely with our partners in the U.S. Chamber on a lot of federal issues. You'll see a lot of these things really mirror the business index that was presented earlier. So when we look at this, and these are national type of numbers, but I tell you what, over the last 10 years and following this and following local trends, these are very, very representative of our region. The interesting one that's up here, and they're new to the index, is the artificial intelligence, the AI. And in there, 65% of small businesses say that AI will definitely impact future staffing issues and changes. And 64% are that AI Dow proficiency in AI and job postings. And so you're beginning to see that and what that's going to look like. 72% in fourth quarter this year, anticipated revenue growth in 25. 55% still view inflation as one of the top economic concerns. Interesting thing here, 41% plan on increasing hiring and new jobs as we get into 2025. And then that regulatory environment, 41% believe that the current regulatory environment, and again, this would be both on the federal and then on their local levels, are really impacting their ability to grow. And then 38% view their regional economies as being in good health. So a lot of good economic data there. We rely on the U.S. Chamber on the quarterly basis there as well. Go on to Chris, so everything has to have an acronym, right? So the Capital Region Improvement Support Package, we talked a little bit about this last year. And so, with the leadership we had the past 2 years in the House and Senate, we've had close to about $450 million of state appropriations in 2023 and 2024. So in 24, we had $100 million went to support economic development, education, workforce development, water infrastructure, which if you're not hearing about water right now, it is a significant issue. And it's not only our region, but I think this is probably across the state. And so it's something that you're seeing more and more about, and the importance of water and what that infrastructure looks like. Roads, transportation infrastructure, housing development, and then social services is where the $100 million broke down. But I know that Steve Jappinga and our team and a number of regional partners have been extremely active in working with our Capitol Caucus and Senator Anthony and Representative Witt at that time in securing a lot of funding. The future, what that looks like, we'll talk about that in a minute. Next slide, Jeff. So, well, here's the minute. So looking ahead to 2025, and this is where this is for us, and really as we kind of start thinking about what the year is going to look like for us, this is where it is. So we look at this, we have elections coming up in Lansing and East Lansing, and as we always say, we never stop. I mean, we get through a presidential election, and then what do? Well, we have significant elections here in Lansing and East Lansing, including the mayoral piece of that. The City of Lansing Charter Commission, so a year ago we talked about the importance of getting and seating a charter commission that was going to be thoughtful as they went through this process. When you think about that charter, it's kind of like the opening up the state constitution. This is the guiding governance and principles of the City of Lansing and government there. So, what we ended up getting, what I thought could not have been a better result for the 9 individuals that were elected. There were some stumbles out of the gate and different thoughts and personalities, but they worked through it. The leadership of Brian Jeffries, many of you know Brian, longtime Lansing City Council member. We were extremely pleased when Brian was elected as the president of that. Again, I think just bringing some leadership and experience to the conversation. They made it through the strong mayor, city manager conversation, which drove 99% of this. That's what this issue was all about, and they've made it through that. They've talked, and they're still talking about the makeup of city council. We currently have 8. Everyone agrees having 8's probably not a good idea with 4-4 tie. So do they go to 9 and add a council member? Do they take one away at 7? So those are the types of things I think they're still trying to resolve. They're making it through the BWL governance. So those are some of the big structural pieces, and now it's kind of getting down into more of the details. We're following it closely, but we're optimistic they're going to get through hopefully this spring. The plan would be to put the charter back on the ballot in August for Lansing voters to approve it. I think it's a little aggressive because it still has to go to the Attorney General's office and the Governor's office for final approval before they would do that. But we'll see. Fair enough to say that probably in 2025, Lansing residents will be asked to approve charter revisions. 2017 Federal Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, those are expiring at the end of this year. I think the one thing that the Democrats and Republicans agree on right now is finding fixes for that, continuing what's working, fixing what's not working, such as R&D tax credit. Those are the types of things that we hear from some of our businesses around here. At the time, Senator-elect Slotkin had sort of asked our organization to what would it look like if we kind of put together, she called it a white paper, I'm not sure it's a white paper, but really trying to work with businesses in this region to identify what's working in there now, what would we like to keep, and what are those changes we would like to see go through. But so I think for us, was looking on this, can the Democrats and Republicans in D.C. find some compromise to address some of the things that were wrong in 2017, fix those, but keep these going and reauthorize those by the end of the year. We have divided state government now, with the Republicans coming back in the House after 2 years of Democratic control. So, what is that going to look like? They actually met yesterday, so there's a lot of activity downtown. So I think you're going to see a much more robust meeting schedule for both the House and Senate as we get through this year as well. And then when you kind of think about it and you look ahead 2 years. This is the final 2 years of Governor Whitmer's administration, and what and how is this going to look? What are those priorities, and how can we see some compromise? I've had both Democrats and Republicans tell me that they think divided government is the best thing for Michigan. So hopefully that's positive, and hopefully we're going to continue to see some things working there. In partnership with LEAP, we're working on the State of the Region benchmarking report. This will be the second one. The first one came out in 2020. So we're updating that with a number of key economic indicators and really measuring our region against like regions around the Midwest, and then tipping down into the Southeast with Greenville. So these economic indicators are indicators that look at the sustainability of our region, the strength of our region, and kind of where we're going. But most importantly, what are we doing to compete for additional investment, job creation, talent, attraction as well. I think in the 13 years, I've never not talked about the economic uncertainty, and whether that's the local, state, federal level, and we have it again as we get into 2025. I'm guessing, like many of you, until Tuesday of this week, I hadn't thought about Greenland in a long, long time, right? And so it's that type of economic uncertainty, and when we look at the pending tariffs, and a lot of those types of things going into the new year. We're in the new year now, but it was interesting again in the index and seeing that the positivity from the business community, what that might look like, but really kind of felt like for the last 6 months of last year that there was a big giant pause button that was hit, probably nationally on where businesses were going and investing. And so earlier it was mentioned the Corporate Transparency Act on December 2020, early in December, it was upheld or overturned, and then on December 23rd, all of our worlds turned upside down because it was overturned at that time, I think, Kim, right? Only to have it, 4 days later, it was, upheld in another court. So, we're going to see where that is, but it's that type of uncertainty that businesses certainly do not like and do not want to operate within. 2026 gubernatorial election, all intent and purposes, it started in December. And by that I mean when Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan declared he was running as an independent. And so that's going to be a very interesting process to follow this year. I think that that's going to continue to play out, and by the end of this year, it's going to be a very, very clear picture of where it is. There's a lot of names being thrown out there. I'd be thinking the Republican side, hearing everything from John James and Peter Meyer to Mike Rogers to previous gubernatorial candidate Tudor Dixon. On the Democratic side, you got Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist, Secretary of State Jocelyn Vincent. So there are a lot of names that are being thrown around out there. But Duggan is that I think sent both parties kind of on a big surprise there. So, and then the last slide, Earned Sick Time Act, and I think again Kim mentioned this, and I think everyone in this room is aware of what this looks like. February 21st, new bills being introduced this week, both the House and Senate. I would say this, there's optimism, maybe a little bit. They have about 5 weeks to get a fix in. I would just encourage everybody, I'm sure everyone's moving towards that now, is preparing for February 21st. But again, the House Republicans made it very well known in December during lame duck that this was very, very important to them. And so we'll see what those modifications can look like. But again, February 21st is that date that's looming out there. And so thank you very much for being a part of what this morning is about. So thanks.
I have to say, in your long storied history, and congratulations on that, the Chamber's kind of alternated between being sleepy and being very aggressive, being sleepy, being controversial, being very sleepy. You have awakened the Chamber, and they are doing tremendous things. So thanks for that. Now, another guy who has incredible enthusiasm for this area and doing our, well, I guess I don't need to recognize you. Bob Trezise, the CEO of Witt.
Charlie, you and me are overtime at this point, but that's the most exciting part of the game. So let's try to look at it that way. I appreciate everybody here. There is a lot of exciting things to think about. And so to try to reward you for remaining here, I'll give you a little sort of piece of news, if I could. The first ones that, you'll be the first ones that hear this, but the last 3 months we've been recruiting a very, very major Canadian firm to our region. We've been in major competition with a site in Ohio. And we're really excited today to, well, in a couple of weeks we're going to be announcing it formally, but here we'll say that we've won. And on New Year's Eve, we got a notification from their COO and their CEO that they have selected us. And one of the major reasons why I wanted to thank all of you is because the COO, when we were at a certain city council meeting in a rural area on December 23rd, and had dinner and different things kind of culminating in the 3 months of work. And when we were walking home to our cars after that council meeting, the COO said to me that he had landed many plants in Canada, in the United States, and in Europe, Germany, quite specifically. And he turned to me and he said, "This is the best we've ever been treated and that I've ever been treated." And so that, yeah. So many of you are members of League, and I couldn't be more grateful. We're always in competition, and we have to collectively, through partnership, make sure, though, that we're very focused, like the tip of a spear. And we really are. Tim, Julie, myself, and others are Kepler, Michigan Works. There's others that were got in trouble by not even missing others. But it's total partnership. But we have to be represented really sharply, really well, and have our international people talk to us or know that that's what we're about. And so I'm just thankful to all of you that we can represent our region like that. That's what we deserve, and that's what we're doing. I really will go through these fast now since you already got the big announcement. We had a good year, not a great year in attraction efforts. We've been spoiled because we've gotten so good at landing quite significant companies from outside of the area, especially what we call foreign direct investment. This is the best of the best that you can do in economic development. Brand new companies, brand new jobs, brand new jobs created. That's what you want to do. But we had a huge pipeline going, and all our techniques were working, but it was unbelievable. April 1st, the start of the second quarter, it was a cliff. It was a total stop on an international stage. Decision makers stopped making. They wanted to see. I think it suddenly dawned on them that Trump might win. and I don't think that was, and so they wanted to understand what mainly EV and semiconductor policies were going to mean to them. Secondly, they certainly also halted decision-making because they wanted to understand what was going to happen with the federal corporate taxes in 2025, whether those were going to sunset, whether they would continue, or what was going to go on. So those are two enormous factors. Another factor, I don't want to put you there. So those are the two major factors. So we had a huge slowdown. We had to really readjust and refocus as of July on mid-sized and the companies that we could land, and we did really good in that area. We had 484 full-time equivalent jobs though in business attraction. Expansion ended up being our sweet spot this year. Good numbers in business investment. We have 5 pending projects. Well, one, I just told you that we had landed now. There's 4 left out there, 2 major solar panel manufacturing companies, and 2 particle accelerator companies, both names you know well. And those are, we feel, absolutely a goal. Instead of being able to announce those by December 31st in 2024, they're going to be first quarter of this year, so we're excited about that, Jeffrey. I would say, it's always frustrating me, we don't get nearly as, and I get it, you know, why you land a big plan from Canada, hopefully that's going to be big news headlines, people are excited, but really 2024 was about the great work in our entrepreneurial innovation department, in our Department of Equitable Economic Planning as well, but we had absolute record setting numbers in entrepreneurs. We got a $3.5 million 3-year grant to run what we call the TREC Small Business Support Hub. And this is the biggest money that's ever been infused into our region to support small business and entrepreneurial development. And we have so many partners that are involved in this. We expected to have 600 small business clients working with us over the 3 years of the project. We had 400 in the first 5 months. So it was a real challenge from a capacity perspective. We were up to the task. We're thankful to the MEDC and all these things. By the way, everything I talk about, that's the major partner, MEDC. But it's wonderful. You know, we welcomed it. But you know, I oftentimes worry too that people think in all of this programming, our inclusive programming, our small business entrepreneurial programming, that it's hard to see it. You know, I get that. But there are scores of businesses, like over 50, that have already resulted in what we call physical engagement. That's either an actual storefront, or they're involved in a marketplace, like a farmer's market perhaps. And you know, and that is a lot of businesses in 1 year to be added. In fact, one could argue that that was really the solid foundation of our future. But it doesn't get a lot of attraction, and yet I would argue that we're as good as anyone in the state of Michigan at those efforts at LEAP, and again, with a lot of partners. And by the way, another worry is that, well, it's food and t-shirts. Yeah, some of it is, but a lot of it is really serious, very high-tech kinds of quality companies as well. So it's just an interesting mix. That was really the sweet spot, I think. With major project, major project updates, the Altium project, you can read the rest of this while I'm talking a little bit. It was a shock, a surprise to really the country. It was big national news. The announcement was handled very poorly, if I could say. Whoever was in charge of the announcement, I'm in air quotes on it. But it was the GM or Altium plant was bought by LG Energy Solutions out of South Korea, one of the premier companies in the world. And you know, the news was, oh, GM let us down. What does this mean? GM, yeah, okay, I get all that. But here's how we look at it from our perspective. We love GM, love working with them. I'm obsessed, we're obsessed correctly because it is the future on EV production of manufacturing. Look at LA, that's all I gotta say. We must think and understand climate change and understand the opportunities from a business perspective that are there. And we are. And Lansing area is going to be the EV capital of North America. We are not going to lose sight of that because there's infrastructure and market issues. We know that. But massive transformational change in an economy does not happen smoothly and with a click of your finger. There are ups and downs, and it's a little bit of a roller coaster, but we will not take our eye off that ball. and we are positioned well. So it's better that rather than being quite dependent, maybe over-dependent on General Motors, we love them, I already said that. But why not add another company on par with that, if not even beyond? LG Energy Solutions. And what they're going to do with that plant is probably even a more advanced electric car battery and even other assorted batteries that even are beyond cars. And we've been engaged with, quite literally, the CEO in South Korea. He's engaged us directly. He loves what we're trying to do. We made sure to put advertisements out there and talk about thank you to LG rather than, oh my God, GM. You know, big difference. And so LG is really appreciating that. And I think there's going to be more investment, maybe in the spring this year, in that whole space. I'm super excited about that plant. The jobs will be there as planned. The investment has happened. The plant is up. We're working with the companies now, putting in the internal stuff going on. We're finishing off $66.1 million in infrastructure, electric and wastewater treatment for the plant. Just super quickly. We have amazing childcare with partners. We put together the region's first ever regional childcare coalition. It's just producing new childcare slots for our kids so that your employees can show up for work like crazy. It's the best in the state of Michigan, our childcare network that we put together. With MedTech, I won't even do it. Like Tim, it's amazing to get partnerships. Everything has to work together. Tim is great at politics. We're not. We're apolitical. We do projects. Tim does politics. But one doesn't work without the other. Tim brought in nearly $500 million in state appropriations over the last couple of years. Incredible. That sets a foundation to let us do our job. So thank you, Tim, and all that partnership kind of work. But directly grants for economic development, it is pretty amazing. It's $100 million. And from a federal perspective, speaking of water, we landed a $1.5 million water grant, Bingham Township, St. John's area. Just real quick, Jeffrey. The next one. Yep. These are just an example. We did land additional foreign direct investment or companies. They tend to be small, but they tend to grow into 3 and 5 and 7 years out. A plant with 250,000 square feet with 200 employees. That's what this is about. Next one. Expansion was huge. Gestamp and Mason. Again, thank you, Chris Holman, for a big tip 2 years ago that led to us being in the game and competing and winning a project that didn't exist for us, if I could say. That's how good we were at that particular project. Matrix Consulting, so exciting. We want to also add a lot of engineering jobs. Ionetics, Niawave, those are 2 of the prospective partners, etc. Yep. Continue on here. Good community development projects, including we can now consider child care facilities projects with jobs and investment. And we'll finish off here real quick, Jeffrey. Yep, semiconductor, EV, the final one, please. Okay, just super quickly on this. We're going to, let's see, two things I'll just pinpoint on here real quick. $1.5 million RAP regional grant, which is placemaking. Again, our partnership with MEDC is incredible, Michigan Economic Development Corporation. And we were very proactive 6 months ago and really helped shape a different pathway in how they administer that program statewide. And so we've opened up a regional pathway for a lot more communities to be able to access placemaking money to make sure we look nice and feel nice so that when international visitors come here or visitors from anywhere, that it feels good. And it looks like a place that they should live and invest in. And so this is serious economic development work. And we've actually, as of yesterday, gotten this raised to $2.5 million. It all needs to be approved, but we've harnessed so many communities across our region that otherwise would not have had an opportunity to access this program. I'm just super excited about it, but you're going to be hearing a lot about that. Tim referenced, and then finally, Tim referenced an important benchmarking second phase study that the Chamber and we are really proud to work on together. And in addition to that, we are working on, you're going to see some pretty good public discussion from me, I think with the Chamber as well with us, is we have to be really concerned in thinking about population growth or lack thereof in our region. In surprisingly shocking kinds of ways, I'll leave it at that. And it really, you know, it's gonna, I hope it acts as a wake-up call to folks when we talk about a regulatory environment. Is maybe we're not as much in demand as sometimes we think we are. And we really better be very, very pro-business friendly. We better be very, very people friendly. We better be very diverse friendly, including, I totally agree, with bringing immigrants in, participating in our economy and everybody. That's absolutely imperative. But otherwise, we're gonna have a lot less people living here, and that is not good for any of you. Whatever your business is, that is not good. So it's an issue that hasn't been talked about. The numbers are kind of shocking. And I thought our region was more resistant to the trends because of the university, basically. And it turns out maybe that isn't really true. And so you're going to see some really good proactive work on behalf of that. And with that, I will conclude and thank all of you.
Thank you. Unnecessary announcement, but we are going to run over a little bit. I do want to say all three of you should have started Julie, exemplary of new leadership in the community. I think Carrie Rosengana, a number of other people who stepped in and really lit a fire underneath their organizations and also built a coalition, which in the past we've not been famous for. So congratulations on that. Thank you for the information. Thank you for the great job you do. And now we bring up our twofer guy. You not only get the economic perspective from a guy who knows more about the Michigan economy than anyone on the planet, but you get a little entertainment. You've been here before, you'll know what I'm talking about. If not, stick around, it's worth being part of. Charlie Ballard.
Thanks, Chris. It's a pleasure to be here. Excuse me. It's several years in a row that I've been on the program with Julie and Bob and Tim, and I just want to say that it is a pleasure and an honor to share this work with you. And I've now lived way more than half of my life in mid-Michigan, and I'm glad I've done it. It's been a great place to live, and it's been a great place to live in no small part because of the economic development efforts that folks like you have undertaken. So thanks. It's a pleasure. And I also wanted to say it's gratifying. Ben Bach and you were here 2 years ago and last year, and you actually remembered some of the stuff that I said. That's great. I appreciate it. And 2 years ago we were. Give me some of that water. 2 years ago we were. There was a lot of talk about the possibility of a recession. Would we have a hard landing or a soft landing? And I talked about that. Then last year, it looked like we had probably mostly weathered that storm. And now, nobody's talking about a recession now, or at least there's not a whole lot of serious talk about it. And that's that is a testament to the extraordinary. When you look back from 2009, coming out of the Great Recession, to the beginning of the winter of 2020, we had the longest economic expansion in American history. And then we had the shortest recession, but also the most intense recession. April of 2020 was, by many measures, the worst month in American economic history. But then we bounced back from that. We've gone through an inflation that is now mostly, but not entirely tamed. Incredible resilience. If you had asked me a couple of years ago, would we be as well off as we are now? I wouldn't have predicted it. Are all problems solved? No. There's a lot of challenges, but we've made good progress. And next slide. We continue to grow. This is the increase in employment and over the last 3 years. The first part of that, you can see the rebound from COVID. was still going on. But then, even now, we're still averaging more than 100,000 jobs. The October number was the lowest in a long time, but that was partly because of strike activity and also Hurricane Helene. And hurricanes mess things up just like wildfires do. And so this is really impressive. Better, as I say, than I would have anticipated. So the next slide. And now I'm going to give you some Michigan ratings. And I wish I could report better, but it is what it is. We, for 70 years, have been struggling with the relative shrinkage of manufacturing in general and the auto industry in particular. 1955, Flint, Michigan was by some measures the most affluent place in the world. That's no longer true, and you know the story of why that was, why it was what it was then, and why it's not, why it is what it is now. And so in 2023, which is the most recent year for which we have the data, the 2024 data will come out in September. In 2023, we ranked 39th among the 50 states in per capita income. And you can see that I've given some marker years for the decline. And the next slide shows you the rankings in 2023. Now, I will note, look at Ohio, Indiana, and Michigan. Those numbers are so close together that essentially it's a coin flip about who's 37, who's 38, who's 39. The data aren't actually that accurate, but the ballpark is correct. There's long-term persistence. The Northeast. What are the states that are most affluent? Northeast. And then you notice I've got Wyoming and Alaska in there. States that have a whole lot of mineral wealth. And also, this is per capita. You take the dollars and you divide by the number of people. If you don't have a whole lot of people, that all else equal would boost your number. And then Mississippi and West Virginia have been vying for last place for a long time. Next, the last time, a couple of times ago, I was given these numbers, and somebody said, yeah, but it's cheaper to live here. That's true. And what that does, what cost of living differences do, is they shrink the difference in real inflation-adjusted dollars between the most affluent and the poorest states, but they don't change the rankings very much, except in a few cases. And this next slide will show you the rankings. We don't have as much data for the real inflation-adjusted because the Census Bureau and the Bureau of Economic Analysis only started making those calculations in this century, whereas the per capita income numbers go all the way back to 1929. So that's why I like to use the unadjusted numbers, because we have them going back so far. But what you see here is the nominal rankings. Those are taken from the previous slide. But then you adjust for differences in the cost of living, and that's in the column on the right. Doesn't really change the rankings very much. A couple of notable exceptions. Notice Wyoming is number 5 nominal. It's number 1 real. Inflation adjusted per capita income is up. Who of you is planning to move to Wyoming? Okay, QED. Then Florida. Florida is much worse because it's got relatively higher prices. But a lot of these are pretty close, and you see Minnesota 12-12, Illinois 14-15, Ohio 37-32, and then Michigan we're about the same. So that is not one that really changes the rankings very much. But again, is this a bad place to live? Because we don't have real income as high as New York. Well, I'm not moving to New York. New York doesn't have 1/5 of the world's fresh water. New York doesn't have a lot of things that we have. So the next slide, I want to also talk about within Michigan. How does this region stack up? And this region has been improving steadily over a long time relative to the rest of Michigan. The next slide shows you similar rankings from 2023 in per capita personal income. Now, you see the most affluent county in Michigan, and this has been true forever, is Oakland County. The southern half of Oakland County, Bloomfield Hills, Birmingham, one of the most affluent places in the world. And that really skews the Michigan numbers. But Clinton, Eaton, and Ingham have all been moving up. Notice there are 83 counties in Michigan. We're below the average, but the average is skewed by Oakland and a couple of others. We're above the median. Far more than half of the counties in Michigan are less affluent. Basically, what does it take to be affluent? Well, Oakland, special for a whole bunch of reasons. Leelanau, you know the story there, and in fact, most of the most affluent counties are in metropolitan areas. The four exceptions, we in Michigan know this. I was out in San Francisco at the American Economic Association meetings. The rest of the world is ignorant. They don't know that you do this, and that tells you where you are. Anyhow, the Leelanau, Emmett, Grand Traverse, and Charlevoix are all high in the rankings because of the tourism and because of affluent retirees. Midland County, you know the story there, headquarters of Dow Chemical, and some other stories. You see Luce County, which is up in the UP. It's been fighting it out with Lake County, which is in the Lower Peninsula. And I was at a conference of Michigan economists a few years ago, and somebody said, this is the population issue. We may face challenges here in mid-Michigan, but somebody asked the question, in 20 years, how many people will live in Missaukee County? And somebody said, I don't know, 6, 9? It's the rural areas. You look at the rural areas, the young population is not staying there. They have elderly populations. They're not getting younger. There are, those places face some real challenges. So next. Yeah, I think we will probably get to further interest rate cuts this year. I think that we will continue to chug along. I'm not thinking we will have a recession, at least not in the future that I can foresee. Although, I have to say, forecasting the economy is like hard. Many years, at the end of the year, some reporter would call me up and say, what's going to happen next year? And in 2010, I said, okay, here's what I think is going to happen in 2011. I didn't predict that there would be an earthquake and tsunami that would mess up the North Pacific supply chain. I missed it. And then in 2019, I didn't predict that we would have what I hope is once in a lifetime pandemic. So there's a lot that can go wrong. But for right now, I think 2025 is likely to be a pretty good year. Okay? But there are things that keep me up at night, and I'm going to tell you about the long-term issue that keeps me up at night and the short-term issue that keeps. First, the long-term. We're now at about $250,000 of federal debt per household. Does anybody think that it was a smart set of policies that got us to that level of debt? Here's debt as a percent of gross domestic product. Next slide. You can see that federal debt as a percent of gross domestic product went way up in the early 40s. I hope all of you know your American history well enough to know what that was about. So, is going into debt a good idea? Well, often it is. My wife and I went into debt to buy our house. We've now paid it off, I'm pleased to say. But we went into debt back in the 40s to defeat Hitler and Tojo. Was that something worth borrowing some money for? Yeah, I think it was. And then, for a generation, we came really close to balancing our budget. Small surpluses in some years, small deficits in other years, and the economy grew rapidly such that debt relative to the size of the economy decreased. It was 1/5 as large as it had been. And then, some of you, you have lived your whole life in the credit-fueled consumption binge that I'm old enough to remember a time when we actually balanced the budget, but that political consensus broke down about 50 years ago, late 60s, early 70s. We lost the political will to balance our budget, except, you see, in the late 90s, we had 4 years of balanced budgets, but then this one, this is the effects of the Great Recession, and then you see the effects of COVID. Who knows what's next, but next slide. You know, I keep wondering, how far can we go? Is the appetite of the world credit markets for U.S. federal debt infinite? I don't think anything's infinite. So I don't think you can go on forever, but how long can you go on before you have a currency crisis? I don't know, maybe a very, she's offering me even more water. Oh, this is my voice doesn't really get warmed up until
Hospitality.
Hospitality, that's right.
I need you back next year, Charlie. Next service.
Oh, okay. So, in 2026, net interest on the national debt will exceed $1 trillion for the first time. And the next slide shows you the time trend of that. And this is adjusted for inflation, right? Prices have gone way up, but interest payments have gone up. So, I don't know anybody who thinks that this was a smart set of policies that got us here. I also don't know anybody who thinks that that we're going to change our policies, because, next slide. Okay, this is a diversion. So if you agree with what I said recently, you're concerned about the debt. And so what was it? We recently had a presidential election where the baseline was that we will add $22 trillion more in the next 10 years of debt, even if we don't change policies. But policy changes were put forward. Vice President Harris put forward, let's do more deficits to the range of maybe 2, 3, 4 trillion, depending upon how you cost it out. President-elect Trump, even more than that. So if President-elect Trump's policies are all enacted, we will probably add something like 30 trillion to our debt in the next 10 years. I don't know how long that can go on. So that's the thing, that's the long-term thing that keeps me up at night. And I do believe in terms of the Social Security, quickly. The witching hour for Social Security, when by current law, we have to do something. And if we do nothing, there will be about a 25% reduction in monthly paycheck, benefit checks, which we know that won't happen because that's politically untenable. So, but something will happen, but if all of President-elect Trump's tax cuts are enacted, that moves it up to 2031. So, I do believe that for Social Security and for the overall debt, we can't put it off forever. So, just in the back of your mind, business folks, somebody's going to pay some more taxes somewhere, or somebody's going to have their check from the government reduced somehow. I'm not sure which it's going to be, because no member of Congress likes to vote for any of that, right? I want to cut your taxes and I want to give you more money. This goes back a very long way. You know the Rosetta Stone? The Rosetta Stone, which we helped decode Egyptian hieroglyphics. It's, what, 3,000 years old? It's a tax amnesty document. It said, we're going to reduce taxes, and it also bragged about our government is strong and we beat up on our neighbors and we want a war. Okay, so the tendency to want to spend more money and deliver more stuff for the people and cut their taxes, that goes back a long way. Next slide. This is not rocket science. You know, if the numbers in this column don't add up to something kind of close to the numbers in this column, you know from the perspective of your own individual household, that's a problem. For the society, yeah, we can borrow, but I think sooner or later we're going to have to deal with this. My guess is we won't deal with it in a serious way for the next several years. Unfortunately, one of the problems with our society is we react strongly to certain kinds of crises. Pearl Harbor, 9/11. That gets your attention in a way that we do something. The slow accumulation of debt, that's much more difficult for our political system to deal with, but sooner or later, I think we will have to do that. All right, okay, then tariffs. That's the short-run thing that bothers me the most, that keeps me up. The worst-case scenario is bad. President-elect Trump, during the campaign, threw out all sorts of different, the numbers, 10% on everything, 20%, 60% on China, or not. We don't know what's going to happen. The tariffs that were enacted 7 years ago, on China, those didn't really disrupt the world economy all that much. Our trade deficit with China went up, it didn't go down, but we put tariffs on them, they put reciprocal tariffs on us, but who was the biggest beneficiary of those tariffs? Vietnam, because huge amounts of stuff got rerouted from China through Vietnam. And there were carve-outs. Tim Cook of Apple Computer had a personal relationship with Donald Trump, and so iPhones made in China were exempted from the tariffs. So those kind of workarounds will happen maybe. To the extent that they do, I think that will soften the disruption. Now, am I saying that, so I'm saying the worst case scenario is unlikely. But I'm hoping that we don't go all that far toward the worst case, which would be massive universal tariffs on everything for every country with no workarounds. So am I saying the tariffs are all bad? No. Just like, is beer bad? No. I'm planning to drink a beer while I watch the Spartans beat Washington tonight. Okay? And one beer, not a bad thing. Some tariffs, not a bad thing. If I were to drink 12 beers during the game, that would be a problem. You see, a lot of it is, it's not that the thing is bad, it's just don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. And on that hopeful note, let's sing. I have subjected many of you to this before. I'm sorry if you're sick of it, but I have made it my mission to get Michigan singing. And this is our state song, or at least the first verse of one of our state songs, sung to the tune of "Oh Christmas Tree." And I'm going to sing it whether you like it or not, but I invite you to sing along. A song to thee, fair state of mine, Michigan, my Michigan. What greater song than this is thine, Michigan, my Michigan. The whisper of the forest tree, the thunder of the inland sea, unite in one grand symphony of Michigan, my Michigan. Give yourself a big round.
Great job, Charlie, thank you, I appreciate it. But attacking the Rosetta Stone is a tax document.
Give them back.
Little reminder, today's brochure is updated on the website. Go there, click on your QR code, Today's presentations are going to be shared as blog posts on our website as well, so you can recapture this whole thing. Thanks to Cinnaire, Shaheen Chevrolet, Cadillac, Dean Transportation, LAFQ, Foster Swift Attorneys, Fly Lansing, PNC Bank, and TriStar Bank as well. Thank you to my team. Seriously, I'd like a round of applause for Sarah, Benjamin, Rick, and Beth. With that, finally, thank all of you. Speaking of MBN on the website, take a look. We've just redone our website. And it was introduced just before Christmas, or just after Christmas. For our next event, we have someone coming from Lyft in Detroit. We're going to talk about, and also from Apex, which is the former PTAC, we're going to talk about federal procurement. So there are a lot of contracts out there you can be having. So with that, thank you for being here. Thanks to all of our presenters. Great job. The work you all do. Have a prosperous